Good evening. It is my pleasure as president of the Carbondale branch of AAUW to welcome you individually and collectively, members, guests, family, and friends, to what we expect will be another dynamic hour that we spend together. We're glad that you are here, and we hope that our program will add to your being informed on our topic of the evening and leave you more empowered to work on advocacy issues for those who need special care. Before we get to the program, however, please allow me to take a brief diversion to acknowledge Women's History Month. While our program is not a special feature of women's history this time, we truly recognize the importance of the fact that yesterday, March 8th, was International Women's Day, and we cherish the attention that was given to the United States proclamation that was signed by President Biden to attest to that fact. We further appreciate that UNAUSA here in Southern Illinois was able to host an event that drew attention to Eleanor Roosevelt, a woman who is commonly recognized as having been significantly engaged in the fight for equity and advocacy for women and girls. We encourage you to take advantage of some of the many exciting and informative programs that are offered the remainder of the month. SIU has a Women's History Month calendar, and the Carbondale Public Library webpage, where you registered for this event, is a great resource for many of the events this month. And of course, one of the positive effects of our climate of virtual meetings is that we can Google topics of interest and find people of national or international renown who are making presentations that are top quality and often free of cost. Thank you for indulging me that diversion. Now, just before we get back to tonight's program, I'm going to give you our order of the evening, which will be Marcia Anderson, our co-chair for programs, will introduce the presenter for our main program. Our presenter will provide some wonderful legal tips for caregivers. The program will have a Q&A monitored and moderated by Linda Flowers. We encourage you to enter your questions for the presenter into the Q&A as they come to mind. If your Q&A does not work, you certainly may enter them into your chat box. After interaction with our presenter is concluded, our branch vice president for membership, Martha Ellert, will come to you with some special thoughts about AAUW membership. After that, I will return with closing remarks. But now we have a little surprise for the evening. At this point, we want to treat you to a very empowering, energizing, and brief video that says a lot about women and their work. At the end of the video, Marcia Anderson will come to you with the introduction mentioned. And now Marcia Anderson.
Thank you, Ella. I am delighted to introduce our speaker for this evening. And this is quite depictive of a local woman and her work. Rebecca O'Neill is a clinical professor of law at SIU's School of Law. She holds a SIU bachelor's degree and a JD from SIU School of Law. She's part of the School of Law's legal clinic that was the 2020 recipient of the Excellence in Legal Education Award presented by the Illinois State Bar Association's Standing Committee on Legal Education, Admission, and Competence. The award honors a law school program that emphasizes real-world skill for students and is the highest award the legal clinic can receive from the ISBA. This evening, Rebecca will give an overview of the School of Law's legal clinics serving residents in a 13-county area, and she will discuss legal planning tips for the caregiver role and how to maneuver through that process. And here is Rebecca O'Neill.
Thank you for inviting me to speak tonight. I'm very happy to be here and to speak with your organization. Let me first talk a little bit about the 4 legal clinics that we have at the law school and tell you the types of services that they offer. And then I'll tell you about some legal tips that are very important to you as caregivers. We have a veterans clinic at the law school. The veterans clinic does many things. It primarily represents veterans who have discharges that are other than honorable, and they represent people who suffered from post-traumatic stress syndrome or sexual assault while they were in the military and ended up being discharged from the military. And so they try to get upgrades for them based upon their medical records. They also represent people in service-connected disability cases. So they work hand in hand with the med school and doctors in going through their medical records to try to determine whether their disabilities are service-connected and whether they are entitled to benefits as a result of that. That program represents people really from throughout all of Illinois. There are some other legal service programs that also represent veterans, but that program is not specifically limited to people in our region. We have a domestic violence clinic that serves victims of domestic violence in Jackson County. That program represents people who have been abused by family members or partners, people in dating relationships, and they get orders of protection for those people. The clinic experiences a lot of people who have been through very traumatic times in that clinic. So our students who work in that program get real life experiences on the trauma that's involved in those people's life and just how difficult those cases are in court. They're very hard cases to experience and just to see that type of human behavior because it can be very, very disturbing. We also have a juvenile justice clinic. It serves only people in Jackson County too. Our attorney in the juvenile justice clinic serves as the guardian ad litem in cases where children have been neglected, abused, or they're in dependency cases. So those cases would be in the juvenile court system. And our students learn all about the juvenile justice system through that. They work hand in hand with the attorney who runs that program, analyzing records, working with the social service providers, with the medical community, trying to determine what the best outcome should be for those children, whether they should end up being reunited with their family members or whether some other remedy should be appropriate, whether they go into foster care, their adoption, or something else, whether parental rights should be terminated. That's what those cases are all about. And then we have our civil practice clinic for elderly. That's really the flagship clinical program in our law school. It's been there the longest. I've actually worked in that program for almost 30 years. This August, I'll have been there for 30 years. But in that program, we serve a very large region. We serve the southern 13 counties in Illinois, and we represent people age 60 and older in civil matters. We provide a very large range of civil services for people. We try hard not to cut into the local law firm's practices. You know, we graduate the law students, we want them to be successful in their careers here. So we do limit the scope of our cases in that manner. But even saying that though, we have hundreds and hundreds of clients that come through our program every single year. So we're a very high volume clinic, and we cover the 13 counties. So, you know, we cover a very large region. So we spend a lot of time on the road, and our students get to experience, you know, a lot of Southern rural poverty right here in Southern Illinois. They get to experience that. And anyway, so it's educational to them in many, many ways. When I was asked to speak tonight, you know, we planned this many, many months ago, and we knew that it was going to be Women's History Month. So I was trying to think of a topic that was specifically related to women. You know, all legal issues are related to women. So I was just trying to think, you know, what do women do differently than men? And it's not to say that men aren't caregivers. Many, many are, and I don't mean to say that they're not. But you know, if you are like me and my family members and many of my friends, many of us end up serving caregiver roles in many different ways. And our legal clinic ends up representing a lot of people who are caregivers for family members. Being a caregiver in terms of legal concept and in terms of what I want to talk about tonight comes in two major categories. I'm not going to focus on this first category, but let me just say this. We have a lot of people that we represent who are caregivers for children that they're not their children. So we represent a lot of grandparents who are raising grandchildren, and other relatives, aunts and you know, cousins, and many people end up raising children that are not their own. So that's a whole separate legal process, guardianship process, that we do in those cases, separate and apart from what I'm really going to primarily focus on tonight. What I want to focus on tonight deals with people who are over 60. And I want to tell you some of the most important things that you really need to know to help your family prepare for these types of situations. The most important legal documents that your family needs are powers of attorney. There are two kinds of power of attorneys. There is one for healthcare. The healthcare power of attorney allows the person to name somebody to make their medical choices for them in the event that they're unable to make their choices themselves. It allows them to name one person at a time, so they can name backup people, but you cannot name people to serve simultaneously. The document also allows the person to express their thoughts about life-sustaining treatment. And it allows them to express any type of limitations that they would want to place on the person who they've named as their decision maker in the event that they lose capacity. Another very nice thing about the form is that it allows the person to state whether or not the agent that they've named has the ability to communicate with the doctor and the medical providers in the event that they're hospitalized or receiving care, even though that they're still making their own choices for themselves. So it opens up that communication that family members can have with the medical community, which is often very, very important in helping provide care for that person and helping provide oversight to make sure that that person is receiving appropriate care. So the power of attorney for healthcare, I would say, is the number one thing that you need to make sure your family members have when you are becoming that role, that caregiver, serving that caregiver. The second power of attorney is also extremely important. It's the power of attorney for property. And a lot of people think property means real estate. Well, it means real estate, but it means everything else too. Your personal property, your bank accounts, the right to speak to creditors, the right to speak to the phone company, any type of financial relationship that a person has, they can delegate that power to an agent and a power of attorney for property. If you don't have that instrument and you lose capacity, your family doesn't automatically have the right to communicate with those people on your behalf. A lot of people think that spouses can sign for each other, but you can't. So, you know, some people have joint accounts with, you know, their family members. And so that would give that person access to that bank account, but that's all it would give them access to. So let me give you an example. Let's say you own a piece of real estate, and let's pretend it's spouses that own this piece of property together. And one of the people ends up having to go into long-term care. The spouse that's in the community could not transfer that real estate without having legal authority to do that. If the person has lost capacity and can't sign that legal document themselves, in order to be able to transfer property, you would actually have to go through a court process to gain the power to do that. Having that spousal relationship would not give you that legal authority. And even just simple little things. So, you know, let's pretend you're caring for your mother and she has let's say she has a cell phone and she's lost her hearing and she can't use the phone anymore. Or she's lost capacity and she can't communicate on the phone anymore. You wouldn't automatically have the right to cancel that phone bill. If you had a power of attorney for property, it would give you that right. So the power of attorney for property is really, really important, particularly if people are starting to lose capacity to make their own choices. So those are the two most important documents. There is also another document called the Mental Health Preference Treatment Declaration. It is specifically designed for people who have mental health diagnoses. The power of attorney for healthcare also gives the agent the right to make mental health care decisions, but the Mental Health Treatment Preference Declaration gives the person who's signing the form a broader right to express limitations that they would want on specific types of mental health treatment. So if somebody has medical issues that involve mental health matters, that type of person might want to specify more specifically the types of mental health treatment that they would want their agent to be able to consent to or to refuse for that matter. So that instrument's important for that type of population, people who also have mental health issues. Some other things that I wanted to talk about, just to give you some big tips. In Southern Illinois, we have a fabulous network for the aged community. Egyptian Area Agency on Aging is the main office. It's located in Carterville, and its role is it's the grant distributor. So they oversee the grant that our legal clinic for elderly receives, but they oversee grants for lots of other services in Southern Illinois. And they also have a fabulous website, which they keep up to date, which is a huge resource for many topics related to things that caregivers need to know. So I would suggest, you know, if you have a particular issue, to look at their website. It's Egyptian Area Agency on Aging. That's the organization. The other main organization that we have in Southern Illinois is Shawnee Alliance for Seniors. They have multiple programs for the aged community, and we work hand in hand with them. We get a lot of our cases from them. So for example, they have an elder abuse program. They refer those cases to us whenever guardianship is necessary as a protective measure for somebody who's lost capacity, who's being neglected or abused. And they refer many other clients to us, to people who need power of attorneys, wills, or a variety of other things. So know that they are a fabulous resource. They have social workers that can give you lots and lots of information about a huge variety of issues that you would experience as a caregiver. A couple of other things that I wanted to tell you just briefly. A lot of people ask me about Medicaid and paying for care, paying for nursing home care. Everybody worries about that kind of thing because nursing home care is so expensive. I wanted to give you just a couple of tips on that. We have different rules for spouses than we have for single people. So just know that if it's a couple, a married couple, that we have spousal impoverishment rules that protect the spouse who's in the community from being impoverished for, having to pay for the care of their spouse that's in the nursing home. Before those rules were enacted, the spouse in the community was responsible for paying for all the care of the person in the nursing home, and they were impoverished. They couldn't even afford to live in their homes anymore. So the federal government changed the rules on that. And now we have Medicaid programs that allow for the payment for the spouse that's in the nursing home while the other spouse remains in their home. And there are many, many rules about allowing transfers to the spouse that's in the community. So this is another reason why the power of attorney for property is so important. If the spouse goes in the nursing home and has lost capacity, the spouse that's at home in the community, if they have the power of attorney, can transfer the house to themselves. That is a legal transfer. So without a power of attorney, you can't do those types of transactions. So that relates back to the beginning of why that's so important. One of the other main things that you need to know about that topic is right now the look back period is 5 years for transfers. And this would be transfers to people other than your spouse. So transfer to your child or to somebody else. So if people transfer their assets within 5 years prior to needing Medicaid to pay for their care, they look at those transfers and they penalize the person so that whatever that amount would cover in terms of cost of care, Medicaid won't pay for that care for that period of time. So that's the look back period right now is 5 years for transfers. One other tip is that if you are caring for somebody and it seems inevitable that they're going to end up needing long-term care, you need to go ahead and get their funeral arrangements paid for in advance if you possibly can. The rule for Medicaid is if you do that 3 months prior to the person going into long-term care, they don't look at that as a transfer. So you can put that money aside for that, and it's not counted against the person in terms of penalizing what Medicaid will pay once they go into the nursing. If you don't do that and they go in the nursing home, that money can't be used to pay for their funeral expenses. So the cost of the funeral would then fall on their family after they pass, which, a lot of funerals cost at least $10,000 now. So you're talking about a lot of money that if you do it in advance of the person going into the nursing home, you prevent that burden from falling on the family, and it's legal to do that. So that's just one tip that I would like you to know. I want to give you the 800 number for our clinic, the Civil Practice Legal Clinic. Right now, we still are doing intake this semester. We will end up closing intake soon. The COVID has significantly impacted how we've been able to provide services for the past year, but we still have been providing legal services this whole time. But we've had to limit where we can see clients. Normally we see clients in senior citizen centers, and almost all of them have been closed to us to do that. So we found other locations where we could meet with people in a safe way and have successfully pulled it off. But anyway, the 800 number is 800-673-6130. And then for the other clinics, it would be our direct line at the law school, which would be 618-536-4423. And then I've got a few minutes left to speak, and I just want to tell you briefly about guardianships, because sometimes people don't get their legal work done in a timely manner, and they wait too long, and people have to have capacity to be able to sign the power of attorneys. So there's two different levels of capacity. For the healthcare power of attorney, the person just has to understand what they're signing. If it's the financial power of attorney, the power of attorney for property, they have to be a sound mind and memory, which is a higher level of capacity. So, sometimes people come to us too late and we're not able to prepare the documents for the people that need them. And when that happens, we have to do guardianships in the court. So, a lot of our clients don't have to pay the filing fees for guardianships, but it's all dependent on their income, whether they have to do that. So a typical guardianship, if you have to pay the filing fees on it, the filing fees are about $300. And then another attorney gets involved in addition to us, because the person who you're trying to get guardianship over gets an attorney appointed for them. They're called a guardian ad litem. That attorney will also charge fees. And depending on the nature of the case, I mean, you could be talking anywhere from $500 to $2,000 or $3,000. Just depends on the case and how much work they have to do, whether it's contested or not. So you're talking about a lot of money. And the other thing is, it's just a lot of legal work for anyone to do, for any attorney to do. Once you're in the guardianship process, it can be a very fast process. It requires a doctor to complete a physician's report before you file the guardianship. And then the case is usually set for hearing within a month. COVID has totally messed up the court system on getting those things done quickly too, but they are cases that are prioritized in the court over other cases, because you have somebody out there that you've alleged to the court lacks capacity, and that puts that person at high risk of harm. So anyway, they are prioritized in the court. But once you get through the guardianship process, then you have to report to the court every year until the person's death. So you want to try to avoid that happening if you possibly can, by making sure you get your power of attorneys done before somebody loses capacity. So those are the major things that I wanted to talk about. I mean, we cover lots and lots of issues in our legal clinics. So any of these topics, I could talk on about for a very long time, but I thought I just would kind of summarize what I thought was most important for you to know as caregivers. So that's it.
Okay, then we will start with questions. Is it Rebecca or is it Dr. O'Neill?
Oh, Becky.
Okay, Becky, good. Here's our first question. If someone has life insurance, how does that work with Medicaid?
Well, it doesn't work as well as having a funeral plan, because with a life insurance policy, you can only have $1,500 worth of life insurance. And if it's over that amount counts against you. They let you sock away a whole lot more than that in a funeral plan. So I guess I'll just be blunt about it. I think the funeral home lobby was powerful in the state. And so they exempt a lot of things that are covered in a funeral plan. They call it funeral merchandise. So all the money that you pay for various things don't count as an asset. So you're able to successfully pay for a funeral by doing a funeral plan in advance. So my advice would be you probably should set up a funeral plan rather than have life insurance to cover the funeral.
So when you do the funeral plan, do you pay for that in advance?
Yes, you do. So what it is, you go to the funeral home, and it's like a life insurance policy, only it's called a funeral trust. But the funeral home actually buys a policy, but it's irrevocable, so you can't change it. So they suck that money away into the policy, and depending on the type of plan that you get, it can gain. It's like an investment, sort of. So the interest that it gains helps cover the increased cost of the funeral as time progresses. So if you buy it now, and the funeral's not from 10 years from now, but the cost of funerals have gone way up since then, the costs that you paid would cover the funeral. So.
Okay, so can you talk about students? How do they work in the legal clinic? Do they receive credit or pay?
Both. So they can't we don't allow them to get pay and get credit at the same time, although the American Bar Association recently changed the rules on that, and people can do that. But typically, students start working in our legal clinics their second year of law school, and most of them, once they start in a legal clinic, continue working in the legal clinic just because they love it. And but then we also pay students to work in the clinic too, because we have some grant funding to do that. So we try to hire students right after their first year of law school and train them really heavily during their second year. And then by third year, they're very valuable to us. So they get, really good training, and it really helps them get jobs after law school too, because they have a lot of skills that they've developed in representing people. And they know a lot, they know how to do a lot, because we do, we cover a lot of different types of legal topics in the services that we provide.
Okay, this has been very informative. I've been around for over 40 years and I'm learning things about the legal clinic that I didn't know. So can you discuss how individuals can find out about the legal clinics?
Well, there's lots of different ways. I mean, we're on the website for SIU School of Law, and there's a description about each of the clinics on the website. So, that's probably the easiest way to get the information about us. And, call that 800 number to access our civil practice clinic, or call the other telephone number that I gave to access any of the other clinics. And, we return calls quickly. We try to.
Okay, here's another question. What other civil matters does the civil clinic deal with?
Oh my, we probably have 200 different types of cases that we represent people in. So, family law, we do all kinds of different family laws cases. So that can be anywhere from grandparents raising grandchildren to even grandparents' visitation rights. We do cases like that. Child custody cases. We do some divorces. We're trying not to do as many divorces now because they're extremely time consuming. But so all kinds of family things. We represent lots and lots of elderly people who have problems with creditors. They have large credit card bills and they simply can't pay for their food and medicine and their credit cards too. So we give lots and lots of legal advice to people who have gotten into that type of situation, and tell them what their rights are, what income is exempt, what assets are exempt, so they know whether or not they really have to pay these bills. A lot of creditors are wicked about how they harass people to pay. I mean, they just terrify our clients. So we are happy to represent people in those matters to make sure that they know what their rights are. We get involved in a lot of elder abuse cases. Those come in all types of ways. So some of them are financial exploitation cases, some are severe neglect. We've witnessed very terrible things in that way. So we do civil cases on those. Sometimes state's attorneys get involved in those cases, but very rarely. Simply because on financial exploitation cases, they're often very difficult for the state's attorneys to prove, because the person who stole the money will say the older adult gave them the money. And, it's just hard to prove when somebody's lost capacity because they're not able to testify about what really happened. So that's a lot of what we do. We give general advice about a lot of other things too. So, like this caregiver presentation I gave tonight, all the ins and outs of who's responsible for the medical bill, and actually I should probably say that too, as a tip for you caregivers. If you are a child of somebody, you are not responsible for their medical bills. You're not responsible for their nursing home bills. A lot of nursing homes will make you think that you are, but you're not. And if you're the power of attorney for somebody, that does not make you financially responsible for their bills either. And a lot of nursing homes will make you think that you are, and you're not. It's prohibited by law for the nursing home to put that in a contract. And our state statute says that directly, absolutely says the power of attorney is not responsible for those bills. So, those are two important things for you to know, which I'm glad you asked that, because I meant to say that in my major tips for you tonight. I left it out. So anyway, we cover many, many, many things. So if you have a legal issue, it wouldn't hurt to call us and see if it's something that we cover.
Next question. Do you need an attorney to file power of attorney paperwork, or can you complete the paperwork yourself?
I recommend that you have an attorney to do the financial power of attorney simply because it has a lot of legal language in it. It's very easy to fill out a healthcare power of attorney yourself. It's very straightforward. So I would say, if you have access to a healthcare power of attorney form, go ahead and do it. It has to be witnessed by one person. It can't be somebody that's related to you. The person has to be over the age of 18. They can't be one of your heirs. So, I mean, there are some parameters on the witnessing of that document, but it's pretty straightforward. For the financial power of attorney, the power of attorney for property, I would suggest you have an attorney do that. Our services are free. So, if you're in the age category to use our services, you should. We'd be happy to do them for you.
Okay, and someone wants to know, how are the legal clinics funded? Are legal clinics typical in schools of law?
Yes. In fact, I think probably all law schools have legal clinics at this point. They're a huge part of legal education in our society at this point. It's called experiential legal education. Our clinics are funded different ways. Like our civil practice clinic, we get very large grants to the Department of Aging and through the Lawyers Trust Fund. And then the Veterans Clinic gets very large grants for the work that they do. The Juvenile Justice, they also get grants from the state, maybe from the county. I'm not sure which is their funding source, or if the state dwindles the money to the county and they give it to us. I'm not positive, but they do get grants. Our domestic violence clinic started as a grant funded program. It's no longer funded by a grant. So that's straight on the university's budget right now. The law school's budget that program is. So, and then, a large part of our services are funded by the law school too. So the grants don't pay for everything by any means. They don't.
Okay, and if someone already has the power of attorney for healthcare and property that they did, would the law school, would the law clinic look at that paperwork that they already have?
Oh, absolutely. We'd be happy to do that.
Okay, then Dr. Lacey, there are no other questions in the Q&A or the chat.
All right. I'd like to thank Rebecca O'Neill for that most interesting and informative presentation. And we'd also like to thank you, Dr. Flowers, for helping us get through the question and answer part. So now we'll ask Martha Ellert to come and give us some discussion on membership.
Thank you, Ella. My role tonight is to talk to you about membership, but I'd like to share with you a few comments about the recent loss of 3 long-serving and very dedicated members of our branch. Anna Morris is a retired Heron High School English teacher, much loved by and dedicated to her students. The 25-year member of our branch, she was our devoted scholarship chair for many years. She died on November 24th of last year. Willa Marvin, a retired employee of the Illinois State Board of Education, and so much more, involved at every level of education, from teaching in a one-room schoolhouse to state and national level positions. Willa joined AAUW in 1956, was a life member. She served the branch in many capacities, including membership chair, corresponding secretary, and she served as president of the branch in 2005 and 2006. Lila died on January 14th of this year. Ann Hill moved to Carbondale in 1979 to work on campus services and computer affairs at SIU. She joined our branch shortly after her arrival. Ann served diligently doing much of our editorial work, newsletter editor, yearbook editor, etc. She also fulfilled many assigned and unassigned roles for nearly 40 years. Ann died on February 15th this year, just 2 months short of her 105th birthday. We miss each of them, but we're pleased to be able to celebrate their contributions and the fulfilling lives that they lived. As we turn to the issue of membership, I'll simply say we know we have much work to do, and we invite you to join us as we continue to engage in advocacy in the interest of equity for girls and women throughout the year, which is our mission. And a bit of news about membership. At present, membership, and this is from the beginning, I think, membership is open to anyone, male or female, holding an associate's or equivalent degree from a regionally accredited institution. However, that requirement of an associate's or equivalent degree may very well be removed. This spring, all AAUW members will vote on this issue. The National Board of Directors strongly supports eliminating the degree requirement for membership. It says that this important change is a critical step in bringing AAUW's bylaws and membership requirement in line with our mission of enhancing equity for all women and girls. While AAUW is fiercely committed to the educational attainment of all women, given our commitment to inclusion, this is simply the right thing to do. Membership would then be open to anyone who supports our mission and goals. If you'd like to know more about AAUW and our branch, I'd encourage you to follow us on Facebook at Carbondale AAUW. Again, we're so glad that you were able to be with us this evening, and now I will turn it back to our president, Ella Lacey.
Thank you, Martha. Thank you very much for those comments. Rebecca, again, we congratulate you and your colleagues on the work that you have already done in the legal clinic, and we look forward to hearing more about future endeavors.
Thank you.
I think you have helped us all to be motivated to look more carefully at some of the preparation as we do caregiving work or have others do caregiving work for us. So again, thank you so much. Please come back anytime.
Thank you.
Okay. I also want to thank the other panelists for your part in supporting tonight's program. And I would like to give a special thanks to the Carbondale Public Library for partnering with us and providing the technical expertise to bring this program to our community via their Zoom service. And as we look ahead to our April meeting, it is 4 weeks from today, on April 13. And on that day, we expect a virtual event featuring Julie Bonsack. She is an artist in the area who has been a teacher at the Carbondale Community High School and is now a quilting artist. We will use the same schedule and venue. We invite you to join us again on April 13th. So thank you so much for your attention and the encouragement it gives us to keep working on advocacy and equity for girls and women. Good night. Best wishes. Thank you.